At Willie Pesek, you notice that John Alkire has been going sans tie. I'm doing the same because I know I have to go out for lunch in a little bit. And look at Willie there. He looks like he's ready for an African safari as well. Willie?
Yes, sir.
You know, we set our air cons here. The official sanctioned temperature is 25.5 Celsius. You guys set it at 28, which is like 83 degrees Fahrenheit?
82 degrees Fahrenheit.
Nice and cool.
Yeah, it's
nice and cool. Nice and cool.
It's hard to get much done. I've gotten a lot of emails overnight from Americans, Brits, and Australians saying 82 degrees, no way. But yeah, it's 82 degrees here now. So let me just get my fan out. I got this fan as a gift a couple of years ago. Never thought I would use it, but you know, the last couple of years in Japan has kind of worked out for me. So.
Wow, you can moonlight as a geisha, actually.
I don't think so.
There was a, remember this shot? I want to show, it was back in the Koizumi days. Remember the whole cool biz phenomenon?
Oh, sure.
And you look at John Alkire, and he exemplifies cool biz.
Cool
but
biz was
like,
Koizumi's
take
best
off
policy.
Your tie. It's lighten up a little bit, get rid of the jacket.
It was his best structural reform, I would argue. It's been nothing less of a revolution to see Japanese businessmen, salarymen, wearing no tie.
Yeah, I mean, the only guy who goes without a tie nowadays is Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, you know. But look at him; he made it cool, and you know. But well, you know what, Willie? It may not be a great thing. I've had people complain to me that the only thing you can do in 28 degrees is sit there. The moment you start to move, you sweat, you're distracted, and you don't want to do anything.
Well, you know, when foreigners visit Tokyo, within about 2 hours, the first thing they say is, my God, it's hot. You know, and there are some economic studies at this point suggesting that the decline in productivity is actually offsetting and in some ways making the modest decreases in carbon emissions somewhat moot. You know, the question is Japan's already low productivity being hurt? Japan's productivity is about 30% less than the U.S. level. Anything that reduces that productivity level, we can argue, is probably a bad thing. So the question is the trade-off between carbon emissions and a very modest reduction in carbon emissions and lower productivity, which affects Japan's potential growth rate, which affects investment trends. So we'll see.
Yeah. And we know what heat does to reproduction. Let me bring in John. John, you know, for all the stuff that you and I have been talking about in the last hour about the competitiveness of Japan, Daiichi Life Research has a piece out that says that last year, 0.13% of GDP was obliterated because of muggy offices, and as Willie just said, 30% less productive than the Americans. A big alarm bell just went off in front of my face. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it is hot, and let's admit it, you know, people work better in cool environments. I think your brain just functions a lot better, and you don't feel as sluggish. But to William's point, I think it is pretty cool that Japanese men are no longer exemplified by a blue suit, a white shirt, and, you know, a dark tie in the summer months. And I think it's almost a psychologically interesting departure point, if you will, and you know, that's the most interesting aspect of it.
Willie?
Yes. Well, I mean, they're still wearing their company pins, so I guess it hasn't been that much of a revolution, but it is good to see. I mean, however, I do think that, you know, there are other things Japan could be doing to reduce carbon emissions. It could be providing more tax incentives for hybrid cars, for the use of energy-efficient appliances, things like that. You have 24-hour convenience stores in every corner in Tokyo. Why not regulate their energy use a bit? You have these garish neon signs everywhere in Japan and, you know, in every city. Why not regulate their use? So I think there are other ways in which Japan can reap, you know, sort of squeeze gains in carbon emissions beyond making us sweat in the office and reducing
Does it really make sense, John? Does it really make sense? Would you rather have less flashing, garish neon in Shibuya?
Well, I mean, a lot of that, you know, needs some footnotes. The neons are actually highly energy efficient. Of course, we have a lot of trains and so forth.
They've gotten that way, certainly.
They've got, yeah, and that's what we're talking about is what's happening today. You know, like I say, the taxis run on all LPG gas. And so they're, you know, compared to other, say, developed countries in G7, I think this country is far more fuel efficient.
Japan is the most energy efficient country in the world, arguably. I mean, you know, the energy associations will all agree to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's digress into another issue that's sort of a pet passion of both of you. Willie, you and I have talked about the looming victory coming on August 30th of the DPJ, and John and I have been talking about the DPJ. He believes that the DPJ is change, and sometimes change in and of itself is a good thing, considering, I mean, given the status quo and really the lack of dynamics here. You don't share that optimism, do you, though, just based on our previous chats?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think any kind of change is good. I mean, even if the DPJ isn't that different from the LDP, change is good. It shakes things up, changes the status quo. It shows the LDP that they cannot provide the same, tired policies year after year, decade after decade. So in that sense, it shakes things up. That said, I'm not sure the DPJ's policies are all that different from the LDP. There are some incremental differences, but I think in many ways, it's often hard to figure out where one party ends, where one begins. And I'd like to see more specificity in terms of what the DPJ plans to do. They talk a lot about spending more here, spending more there, without really talking about the debt implications. Japan's debt is approaching 200% of GDP. Good luck with that.
Yeah. John, final thoughts from you. Willie and I have talked about the need for more diversity. I mean, I don't want to paint everything with a brush, but if you look at the political operatives, on either side, they tend to be, maybe DPJ offers some younger little superstars, but they tend to be, guys in, 40s, 50s, maybe 60s. So they kind of, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, you know how the saying goes. How about some diversity, pluralism?
Yeah,
all-inclusiveness.
It's not as the division of lines between the DPG and LPG is certainly not like the Democrats and Republicans or the conservative and the liberals in other countries. It is a little bit more meshed together. But to my point, I think that the fact that there may be change may translate into hope. And a lot of times stock markets are driven by hope. And certainly yours truly here is hoping for a better market in the coming months. So that may be a next catalyst.
Okay. Hey, John, it's always great talking to you. Willie, my good friend, it's always good to see you. By the way, you guys are welcome in Hong Kong anytime, okay? We're 3 degrees cooler with our aircon, and we've got some unheated pools where the sun don't shine, and you can really, really cool off nicely. If you need to escape from the fire there, make a beeline to Hong Kong.
I'm booking my
Willie
flight
and
now,
John
Bernie.
are stars. Do it, and come here. And your yen's worth a hell of a lot, too.
It
you
is.
too, John, okay? 94 yen against the U.S. dollar.
Drinks
You can
around
buy
me.
a lot of Dakins here. All right.